Thanks for joining us for the API's latest webinar. We know that you've got a lot on with your university studies, but we think it's really great and important that you join us for these extra sessions that give you a stronger understanding of the wonderful opportunities about careers in the Australian power sector. The API team and the member organisations that support us, we're passionate about your future and we're really thrilled that you're investing the time to learn with us. I hope you have a great session. The API is a really interesting organisation. We're funded by industry and leading organisations in the Australian power sector with a mission to develop the future workforce for Australia's energy future. So we have a small but mighty team of only 5 or 6 people spread around Australia, supported by 20 plus different industry organisations. But we deliver programs that range from inspiring primary school students and high school students to think about careers in STEM and then careers in the power sector, university programs that support about 100 scholarship students across Australia, so from first year at university to their final year. And as part of that, a broader community of about 1,000 other undergrads who are interested in careers in power in what we call our Power Up program. And then we also run programs for industry professionals, whether they be first day, first year out graduates, up to experienced industry leaders. And then across that whole life cycle, we work on initiatives such as increasing the diversity of the power sector workforce, whether it's getting people to talk to regional communities, First Nations, or more girls in STEM, up to in our professional programs, we have our Powerful Women Leadership Program, which has supported over 200 women, undergraduates, graduates, and professionals to be part of career pathways into leadership roles in the power sector. So we have a pretty impactful role and a pretty special role, and I'm thrilled to be part of the API's small team of staff, but also our broader community of people from across the power sector that support our mission to develop the workforce for the future. And we invite you to join us.
Hello, I'm Stephanie. Welcome to the very first day, day one of the API Power Up Summit 2024. Very exciting. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I just wanted to give an acknowledgement of country. So as we meet today, connecting a diverse community of power people and students from across Australia, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of these lands and the continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to the people, the cultures and the elders past, present and emerging. So let's get into the why you're here, and that is to hear from our 2 wonderful speakers. First up, we have Jim, who is currently a first-year student. I hope I've got that right. And he also has had an alternative career pathway into the power industry by starting off in a trade, and he's going to share his experience and learnings from that. After Jim has spoken, we will have a Q&A specifically for him. After the Q&A, we're going to have Goncalo, who is a final year student and has undergone a placement at AMO, and he's going to share his experience, but also his research from his final year thesis. And we look forward to those. And it's all over to you, Jim.
Excellent. Thank you for this opportunity. A big thanks to API for giving me this chance to share some of my experience and also hopefully some content that's going to be beneficial to some of the students out there just starting. This is some of the points that I'll be talking on today, introducing myself, where I came from, how I got to where I am, some of the skills I picked up along the way, which are useful in engineering, my relationship with API so far. I'm going to talk about industry access as well for students, and also show you an example of a little logbook that I've started piecing together through all my adventures over the past year and a half. So an introduction, I'm a mature age student. I'm in my second year now of an electrical and renewable power degree at QUT. I was a high school leaver. I left early. I left in year 10. I've had a 10-year career in construction as an electrician. I'm an API scholarship recipient. I'm looking forward to an internship this November with AEMO, and I'm a very active member of the Electric Energy Society Australia. That little picture there is my Engineering 101 project. I was pretty proud of that. My pathway to today. So as I mentioned, I dropped out of school in year 10, and my father said to me, if you're not going to go to school, you need to go and find a job. So he drove me around an industrial estate, and we found a computer shop that took in ex-government computers, refurbished them, and then provided them to job seekers and students. I loved it. I loved the tool use, the tech side of it too, and I wanted to have a think about what kind of career I might want to create for myself. I found a certificate too in electrotechnology. It's also known as a pre-apprenticeship, and that's a 10-week program. They teach you tool use, electrical fundamentals, and there's even a little capstone project towards the end as well, where you make a fluorescent light from scratch. We bent the metal ourselves, put in a little transformer, and it was powered through a cigarette lighter in your car too. So it was a very useful, practical project. Then I carried on. I did some work experience for about 6 months with a family friend. It's quite a competitive little industry. I was at the time, 11 years ago when I was trying to get into it. So I did quite a bit of work experience. Unfortunately, that electrician wasn't able to put me on the tools, but he definitely put me to work and taught me so many amazing skills. He had me climbing around roofs like a possum, squeezing under floors, running cabling. And for those who haven't met me, I'm 6'4". I'm not a small guy, so he definitely got his money's worth. But after that, I got on the phone books, started calling around companies, and I managed to get myself a job trial. I booked that out for about a month. So he said, I'll be ready in a month for you. A week had passed, and he called me up and he goes, hey, mate, can you come in this Thursday? We need your help. And I was like, sure. Stayed there Thursday, running around pulling cables. Friday came along, worked Friday too. I put up, it was a little real estate agent, and I was fitting out all the desks, and all my PowerPoints, I was doing them as quick as I could. All of them were crooked, but I was doing it with like a fantastic attitude. And then they called me in on the Saturday as well, 3 days in a row. And then the owner of the company, who I hadn't met yet, he came in. He said, are you Jim? I turned around. I was like, yes, sir. And he threw me a shirt. And that was the start of my apprenticeship. So that was great. I stayed with that company for 4 years. I completed my license and my apprenticeship, and I became what's known as an electrical fitter and mechanic. And that's just a Queensland way of saying A-grade electrician. That's just what we call it, a fitter and mechanic. During my career, I was very curious. I had lots of questions, and a lot of the questions were, why are the measurements that we need the way that they are? Why the voltage is like this? Why do we do these a certain way? And the answers were always because it's on the plans or because it's in the rule books. And I was like, well, where did the rule books come from? The engineers. Yeah, it's like, okay. What about the plans? Who writes up the plans? Oh, that's the engineers too. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I started thinking about going a little bit further, taking a little bit of a branch off from becoming an electrician and starting studies. I ran into a little bit of a hiccup because I dropped out of school, and I didn't have a year 12 pass. So I started looking into bridging courses. I found one. I started that bridging course, and it was difficult to fit in shifts with my employer. So I thought, maybe a little bit naively, that perhaps I should start my own business, and then I would be able to pick my own hours and study. So I started doing that, and the learning curve for becoming an electrical contractor off the back of an electrician is huge. On top of all the studies, it quickly became a little bit too much for me to handle. And after about 6 months of running this business, which I ended up running for 2 years, another year and a half after that, I had to make a pretty serious decision. Do I want to continue the way that I was going, overwhelming myself at the time, or pick, chasing the electrical contracting path or going down the electrical engineering path? And I decided to go down the electrical engineering path. It was a bit of a risky decision, and I'm so glad that I made it, actually. But I stopped what I was doing. I reassessed my plan because at the time I was 6 months into a year course, but I had another year to go of it because of juggling all the units. and I came across the Diploma of Engineering at QUT. And this is a standalone course. They recognized my trade as a year 12 equivalent, so I got into that straight away. And it also took a year off of my 4-year degree. So I saved a massive amount of time. And for someone coming straight out of year 10 and then a gap of about 11 years from school and a little bit of that bridging course going into this diploma, for me to get through it, the amount of support that I needed that they were able to provide was absolutely immense. So that was a really great pathway for me. Yeah, and I've completed that diploma now, and I'm in my 2nd year of a degree of electrical and renewable power. Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to start a timer. Some of my crossover skills were circuit troubleshooting skills. So when we started doing the pracs in electrical fundamentals, they were really easy for me initially. An established understanding of electrical fundamentals, voltages, amps, ohms are definitely everyday terms for electricians, and problem solving through standards and compliance manual. So on the left here, as some of you will recognize, I've got my voltage meter, my mega or insulation tester at the bottom there. And then on the left, this is the AS3000. It's the electrical installation wiring rules. And it's the electrician's Bible, really. And that actually, yeah, it managed to get me all through my time, a couple of years out of my trade. But as soon as I started working for myself as an electrical contractor and running my own business, the binding just disintegrated in a couple of months. And as you can see, I've actually had to replace it with some zip ties. I thought I'd just include that. So when I started preparing this presentation, I was actually really surprised at how short my relationship with API had been compared to how much that I'd gotten out of it. I only signed up for their Power Up program back in February and their newsletters, and through that was sent an ad for a scholarship, so I applied for that. They also had a pass for the Power and Utilities Summit, so I applied for that, and that's what that photo is just on the right-hand side there. I got to go to the Power and Utilities Summit. It was over 2 or 3 days. I think it was 2 days. Met a heap of students. That's David on the left there and Stephanie on the right. Had an absolutely awesome time. Learned heaps. I got a lot of industry exposure there. And came back with a big notebook full of acronyms and little things that I needed to, yeah, figure out what it meant. So when I came home from that, I was also got an email and I'd been awarded the scholarship with API. So I was pretty stoked about that. And not long after, through that scholarship, they sent me a Google form asking me if I was interested in work placements this summer break. And I was like, absolutely. So I got to pick between their member organizations. They organized everything. They organized the interview. They just sent me a time for the interview. I attended that. It was really streamlined. And through that, I now actually have an internship with AEMO starting this November, which I'm absolutely stoked for. Given that, I needed to do a little bit of studying about what the national electricity market actually was. So I did a little bit of homework, and API actually have some online courses. So I completed their NEM Basics course. It gave me a really nice basic understanding of the network, which will be good moving into my internship. In September, last month now, I found out I'd received the TJFNI award. I apply for as much as I can through all these opportunities. And yeah, I'm really excited for that. I'm going down to Sydney for the EECon. That's through the TJFNI award. It goes over 3 days, all expenses paid. It's the 18th, the 19th, and the 20th of November. And then I'm coming straight back, and the next day starting with AEMO. I had to wiggle my dates there. That was awesome. Everyone was, yeah, more than happy to help me out. Industry access. Okay, so I've been pretty fortunate. I might skip it and come back. These are all of the events that I've been attending over the past year and a half about. 14 of these are in-person seminars or networking events. 3 of these are site visits. One of them was Energex's substation in Newstead. Another one was PowerLink's Belmont substation. And then the third one was Noja Power Gear. I went and had a look around their factory, and only 2 of them were online. I've been all around Brisbane visiting Energy Queensland, who are Energex, Ergon and Eureka, PowerLink and Oricon. I don't know if I said that one yet. Okay. And through these events, I've been asking a lot of questions, and all of these things kept coming up. On the left-hand side here, I've got a little bit of light reading for anyone who's interested. The top one's Queensland specific. We've got the Queensland Energy Jobs Plan, and that lays out Queensland's plan up to 2032. There's also been an update for that released last year. It's short, it's about 60 pages. The ISP is about 100 pages, and that's the Integrated Service Plan. It gets released every 2 years, and that's very similar. In a sense, it's a bit of a roadmap. Having a basic understanding of the electricity market is pretty important, especially if you're going into power. So you're welcome to do a bit of homework on that. These are things that just kept popping up in conversation, and they contain a lot of those acronyms that I didn't know. The reason I've underlined these four at the bottom is they're not light reading, but it's really good to find a way to access them. I can access them through my university. I've got a hard copy of a few, but finding them and even just reading the table of contents and understanding what these documents are kind of for, because these are vital for designing electrical installations. Some activities that I recommend is joining API's Power Up program. The Electric Energy Society Australia student membership is free, and joining your uni student society, and I'll explain some more in a few slides about why. But yeah, building your network. I've met so many great people. Everyone wants to help you out as well. Boosting your confidence, learning industry knowledge, getting access to those site visits. And ESA, the Electric Energy Society Australia, actually have a mentoring program as well, which runs over 8 weeks. So, all right, so where did I find these things? On the left here, this is what API send out in their emails when you're subscribed, and it just shows you all the different things that they're up to. So that's great to keep an eye on. On the right-hand side here, this is ESA's website. They've got the event types. I've highlighted site visits because they're amazing. And your chapter here is, each state has different events. Most of them are actually, you can do online as well. But if you can get there in person, it's great because you meet, you get your foot into these buildings where all these great engineers are working. My student society, I'm a student member of the Electrical Engineering Society, Student Society, S at QUT. This is just the past 12 months. These are all the things that I've had access to, including that PowerLink site tour that I was talking about. They do industry coffee catch-ups. They bring people in. They're great. If your university offers these, which I know that almost all of them do have some sort of student society, just join, get involved as well, get active. There's a lot of benefits that can come out of that and a lot of opportunities. I'll go through this picture here. This was my first big switchboard that I did on my own as a contractor. That's why I have a little photo of it. So when I first went out on my own, it actually has a 3-phase 40 amp provisions for a electric vehicle charger. It was a brand new home, big solar panels as well. And okay, so what are my plans for the future? Getting through the semester, as I'm sure a lot of you students can understand. I'm at week 10 of 13. It's starting to get pretty heavy, but I'm managing it. I'm getting through. I'm really looking forward to EECon through the TJ award I got from API. That's going to be great. I'm super keen for that. And then my AEMO internship starting up in November as well. That's going to be good. I'm going to get some great experience there. And yeah, continuing to stay engaged with industry initiatives through API, S, and ESA. So that's API, who we're with today, my student society, and the Electric Energy Society Australia. I think I spoke too quick. I was timing this out, but that's all my content for today.
Do you plan to work in design as a desk job or manufacturing commissioning back on the tools once you've completed your degree?
Okay, so I'm maintaining all of my licensing that I've attained through my trade, excluding my contractors. So I'm always going to be open to falling back on the tools, but I'm looking for a design desk job. That's where I'm aiming.
Excellent. What perspective do you think you bring coming from a trade as compared to those who start in white collar work or desk work straight out of uni? And then there's additional to that, does your experience in a trade set you up better for leadership than those who haven't been in a trade? How can those have who have not done a trade understand those experiences of the boots on the ground and be better leaders for teams? That's a lot of questions.
I'll just work through it from the start. So I definitely have a different perspective, and I've picked that up. And I think the main thing is a bit of a sense of urgency and responsibility when I'm going through my studies. I'm very keen to get it finished. I'm very engaged. And I think, maybe just coming from work, I treat it like work. So I think coming out the other side, I already have a bit of an understanding of how the work life is, rather, as opposed to someone who came up through school and straight into university and then into the workforce. I'm happy to take orders. I'm happy to get things done as soon as they can be, things like that.
Do you think, your experience in a trade, especially as, a sole contractor or sole trader, has set you up better for leadership?
Yes. Primarily because when you finish your apprenticeship, if you're in a fortunate enough position, you're given an apprentice and you start learning quickly at first. To be honest, I had a really big ego. I wasn't very nice for maybe the first 6 months, and you start to settle down a little bit. But, you then had to lead an apprentice. And then after a few more years, you were running job sites and you're communicating with tradesmen, and then, bridging trades as well, working with other trades to try and finish a project.
What are you looking forward to getting out of your VAC placement?
I want to get in there and see what they're doing. I'm so keen to get into the workforce and find a little bit more about, what they're up to, what skills I can be developing while I'm at university and things like that.
Yeah. How have you found being an older uni student?
Sometimes I feel like a grumpy old man when I'm sitting in a lecture and there's people talking everywhere around me. But for the most part, to be honest, I actually forget until I'm reminded. I feel like I fit in okay. My social skills are all right. So it was really daunting at first. Like, it was an absolutely new thing. I hadn't been in an environment like that in a really long time. So I got used to it though. And it's fine now. I forget that I'm 10 years older more, than some of my peers.
Yeah.
How many flannel shirts do you own? At least 6. I think I have at least 6. I got a couple. I've got 3 red ones, 2 blue ones, and a purple one. Oh,
did you
and a green one.
Do you get those as part of your apprenticeship? Like, did they hand them out?
No, but it's funny because the wholesalers actually brand some and give you those. So I've got like some electrical wholesaler branded flanny shirts. So, and I did wear it on the tools whenever I could.
And Jim, do you know how to answer this one? How can one register with API to receive such industry opportunities?
Yeah, sure. To be honest, I would just right now, if to pull up that answer, I would be Googling the Australian Power Institute, going on their website and subscribing to their little email list. They're also very active on social media. So if you type in the Australian Power Institute on Instagram, I'm not sure about Facebook because I don't use Facebook. And I know they're on TikTok, but I also don't use TikTok. But Googling them or pretty much any form of media, you can find them, including LinkedIn.
Yeah. So that's absolutely correct. We are on all the social channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And I agree, signing up to our API community news, but also signing up to our Power Up program. In order to receive the internship opportunities or the VAC placement opportunities, that is for our scholarship students, and our scholarships open yearly, and that they won't open until February next year. But make sure that you're signed up to our newsletters so that you can hear when they open, so you can apply for that. Wonderful. Thanks. Thanks, Jim. That was really, really great. I am going to pass over now to Goncalo and let him have the spotlight.
Awesome. Perfect. So thank you. Hello, everyone. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the last year of my engineering degree, and I'll be talking about my honors thesis project as well. I'll just quickly go through the agenda. First, I would like to talk about the Australian Power Institute, my involvement with the API, and also my time at the Australian Energy Market Operator. I'll quickly talk as well about my honours thesis project. To do that, I'll have to talk about the shift that is happening currently in Australia in power networks, not only in Australia, but also in other parts of the world. I'll talk about the issue of overvoltage that is experienced in distribution networks, and I'll talk about some of the simulations that I ran in my project and some of the results that I've obtained. I'll talk as well about active power curtailments and my final thoughts. Some of these titles might seem a little bit confusing, but hopefully as we move through the presentation, it will become a little bit clearer. So I am a student at Griffith University on the Gold Coast. I'm currently doing the last year of my Bachelor of Engineering with honours, and I'm majoring in Electrical and Electronics Engineering. I've been with the API since my first year, so it's been 4 years that I've been involved with the API. And I think the API is a great tool for anyone wanting to get into the power industry. I'll mention a few things, a few of the perks of being an API Power Up Scholarship holder. And first and foremost is the community and networking opportunities. The API is super active in organizing webinars where they invite industry leaders to come and speak to us. Some very interesting presentations. And in those formats, often we get then separated into breakout rooms, and you can have very informal conversations with the industry leaders. And I've managed to actually stay in touch with some of them, and it was a great way to grow my network. They also have great opportunities, like you mentioned, the TJFNI scholarship, where they can send you off to conferences around Australia. So there's heaps of opportunities out there. Like Jim said, maybe just subscribe to the mailing list, and you'll be up to date with everything that is going on. Also, the outstanding internship opportunities. So the API partners are the top power companies in Australia, the transmission network service providers, distribution network service providers of pretty much all states of the NEM. And those opportunities are absolutely outstanding. And lastly, the API also provides financial support, which for us students is always very welcome. I was very fortunate last year to have an internship with the Australian Energy Market Operator. I was part of the system planning division within system design, and I've done some work on the energy transition that is currently happening in Australia. The work that I was doing at AEMO was at the early stages. I was preparing some early reports that have not yet come out. And as such, I was instructed by my managers that I shouldn't really be sharing much of what I did at AEMO because it's still very much in the beta stage. So I'm going to refrain from going into specifics what I did at AEMO. But what I can say is that my understanding of power systems has increased enormously from my experience at AEMO. And I would advise anyone that's involved with the API to really seek out these opportunities because they really change the game completely. They're very valuable. But I will be talking about my honours thesis project. The honours thesis project is the capstone project of my Bachelor of Engineering. It's the very last thing I have to do. I finished writing this report last week. I'm just tweaking it now. And in a week and a half, I'm going to have my defense of this project. The title of the project is Performance and Impact of PV Inverter Control in Low Voltage Distribution Networks. Now, that sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but we'll break it down into bits, and I'm pretty sure it will be easy to follow up, and you'll understand what it is that I was trying to achieve with this project. The knowledge that I've obtained at Griffith University and during my time at AEMO was crucial in doing this project. And I singled out three skills that I think are very, very important for anyone wanting to become a power systems engineer. The first one is a Python programming language. Python is an incredibly powerful tool, and the more you use it, the more you realize the number of things you can do with it. And it was super important during my time at AEMO. I used Python literally every day. And for this project is the foundation of the project. All of my modeling of network, my simulations, it was all done using Python. So not only my experience tells me that Python is super important for a power systems engineer, but also senior engineers at AEMO told me during my time there that, Goncalo, please learn Python because it will be a great skill to have, and you'll hit the ground running as soon as you join the industry. Additionally, data is incredibly important. The ability to obtain large amounts of data, processing that data, and just creating a beautiful visual that tells a story. It's a great skill to have. Also because as an engineer, a lot of the times I imagine that our audiences will not be technical audiences. And so if you have just one picture that explains what's going on, that's what people take with them. And it's very powerful. So data. And lastly, power systems. That comes without saying. If you want to be a power systems engineer, you need to know about power systems. But it's incredible how much I've learned by selecting electives in my course that were to do with power and my professional experience in the field. Those two together, I think, made me very not very knowledgeable, but knowledgeable enough to do well at my courses and at work as well. So going more into my honors thesis project, I would like to talk to you about a shift that is happening in power networks. But beforehand, I would like to distinguish between two things, which is transmission network and distribution network. So a transmission network is a high voltage network that comes from the utility generators into the load centers. So they're typically the big towers that you see on the side of the highway, with lots of lines going through them. That's transmission, very high voltage. Distribution is when power gets nearer to the load. So when you see the power poles outside of your home, if they are overhead, they're on the ground, you have the green pylons next to your home. That's distribution. So that's what really delivers the power to the end user. My project is concerned with distribution, so it's closer to home. Think about it that way. It's in your neighborhood. It's around where you live. So traditional power systems used to have utility power generation, and then they had transmission lines that would connect that generation to distribution and then to the end user. And this was a one-way street. The power would go from one end to the other, and then the users would be presented a bill at the end of a quarter. But now with the integration of distributed energy resources, and these are solar panels, electric vehicles, home batteries, this is shifting slightly. Because what happens is in distribution networks, sometimes the power generated by solar panels is superior to the power consumed by those houses in those distribution networks. And so what happens is we have what's called reverse power flow. So load centers are no longer just consumption centers, or they're not just demand centers of power, they're also generation centers. So now we have power coming from two directions, and there's multiple paths in the network that are actually two-way streets of energy. And that has changed the way that energy functions in Australia and other parts of the world. So according to the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, 1 in every 3 Australian homes have rooftop solar PV, and this is the highest in the world. There isn't another country in the world with more solar PV than Australia. And that is set to grow exponentially until 2050, which is the year that Australia aims to have a net zero economy. This bar chart below was released recently by the Australian Energy Market Operator in the latest release of the Integrated System Plan. And as we can see here, we have distributed energy resources, so solar panels, in the light yellow color at the very top. So as you can see, this is where we are now, and this is what it's going to look like in 2050. So there's going to be more and more solar getting into the system. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
You can hear me? Okay, sorry, because I couldn't really see you, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay, cool. All right, so there's going to be a lot more solar coming into Australia. Now, this is obviously a good thing. Solar is a clean form of energy, and it's very affordable, but it comes with some issues. So I want to talk to you about an issue called overvoltage, and that means that voltage levels go up in distribution networks. And that happens because of a mismatch between power consumption and power generation in distribution networks. This plot here explains that quite well. In blue, we have a typical residential load profile. So we have here in the horizontal axis the time of the day, starting at midnight all the way until 11:30. And so in the middle of the night, load consumption is very low as expected. People are sleeping. But in the morning, around 7 a.m., when everyone wakes up to go to work, there's a spike in power consumption. People wake up, they go and have showers, they use hot water systems, they may be cooking their breakfast. And so the power consumption goes up. And as people leave for work, in residential distribution networks, the power consumption goes considerably lower, almost to the same levels as it is in the middle of the night. And then at night, when everyone returns home and people again have showers, they're cooking using induction ovens, using induction stovetops, power consumption goes up to the highest peak demand in residential networks. Now, when it comes to solar panels, the generation is actually quite different. So in the middle of the night, obviously there's no sun, there's no generation at all. But as soon as the sun starts coming up, generation goes up all the way up until midday when we have the highest, when the sun is at its highest, and solar panels generate the most power. Now we can see that these two, they don't match at all. In the middle of the day, we have a period where there's a lot of generation and there's very low consumption. So there might be some problems here with overvoltage issues. If there's too much power in a distribution network, voltage goes up and we have the issue of reverse power flow because demand and generation, they need to meet all of the time in networks. There can't be any discrepancies. So to study this, I used Python to model IEEE's 33-bus distribution network. This is a standardized distribution network that was designed by the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers to conduct studies such as the one that I'm conducting here. So this network consists of 33 bus bars, and each of this bus bar is not a house, rather it's a feeder. What that means is for each of these bus bars, there's a power line that goes out and feeds a number of homes. So the number of homes, given the load that exists at each of these bus bars, which is different, we have anywhere between 50 to 150 homes. And the transmission lines denoted as S here, they have different values of impedance. So I ran different simulations using this distribution network to assess what happens when we have solar panels that are generating a lot of power, when we don't have any solar panels. And my study was looking at what happens to the voltage in the network. So initially, the first simulation I ran was literally just the loads and the impedances of the transmission line. No solar, nothing, just the loads as they are with the impedances of the transmission lines. And what I got was this heat map. I'll quickly explain what this is. At the top, we have all the bus bars in the network. And here on the left column, we have the time of the day, starting at midnight all the way until 11:30. And this is actually quite interesting because you can clearly see the behavior of users of these distribution networks. So in the middle of the night, we have very steady values of voltage. And as we come closer to 7 a.m. and everyone is waking up, we have this green area here where the voltage levels go slightly down. And that's because power demand is higher. And we can see the same thing happening at around 7 p.m. when everyone gets home. Voltage levels go down as well. Now, there are no violations in this particular simulation. And the values over here are not so important. If we focus just on the colors, we don't have any red, which means we don't have any violations. And that's good. That's what we're aiming for. Now, what I did afterwards was I integrated solar panels into that network that I showed you before. So I made it so that 1 in every 3 homes in this network had solar panels, and I ran the simulations again, and the results I obtained were quite different. So as we can see, we still have those morning periods where voltage goes slightly lower because of consumption, afternoon periods as well. But now we have heaps of voltage violations in the middle of the day. And that is because of that mismatch that I showed you earlier between consumption and generation. So here in the middle of the day, voltage goes quite high because of that difference. Now, this needs to be addressed because overvoltage can cause severe damage to the network. We can have transformers getting damaged, transmission lines, or we can have power that is useless for consumers because voltages are just not within appropriate levels, and the appliances at home are not prepared to operate with those voltages. So this really needs to be fixed up. Voltages need to be within appropriate levels. Now, there are different ways to control voltage levels in distribution networks. I'm going to mention 3, but there are more out there. The first one I'll mention is on-load tap changes. And essentially, these are these devices that you can install in transformers that change the voltage ratio of the transformer. So essentially, if the voltage is too high, we can change the on-load tap changer to make it a bit lower. And if it's too low, we can change it to make it a bit higher. So that is a great solution. Capacitor banks is a different solution as well. Some of the substations of Energex have capacitor banks. I've been to a few and I've seen capacitor banks in some of them. And they control the reactive power in the network, and reactive power is then used to control voltage levels. These two solutions are highly effective, but they're also highly expensive. A much more affordable solution is PV inverter control. For those of you that have solar at home, you would have an inverter such as this, should be hanging right next to your switchboard, I imagine. And inverter control is a control within these inverters that controls the amount of power exported to the grid based on the voltage at the grid. So it senses what the voltage is doing at the grid, and if it's too high, it stops the amount of power going out. If it's too low, it just lets everything out. So this graph here explains that quite well. So if the voltage level here in the horizontal axis is at 1, the inverter control allows 100% of the energy to go out. When it reaches 1.05, so that's 5% above nominal level, it starts curtailing the amount of power that goes out. And when that voltage level reaches 1.1, it stops all power from going out into the network. So I ran a simulation with inverter control in all the PV systems in the network, and all the violations were gone. So this showed that this solution is highly effective, but it comes at a cost. And that cost is active power curtailment. The energy that we have from solar systems is very affordable, it's clean. And if we are curtailing all that power that goes out into the network, we're essentially wasting energy that we could otherwise be using. And as we can see here, this plot here actually shows that quite well. In blue, we have the power exports if we don't have inverter control, so go all the way up and down. Whereas if we have inverter control, we are exporting a lot less power, as we can see here. And I've also integrated these curves here on this bar chart to get the total value of energy that we would get without inverter control, and that's about over 10.5 kilowatt hour. Sorry, 10,500 kilowatt hour, that is. And if we have inverter control, it would be 3,141 kilowatt hours. So this is a major, major difference. So what we find is that this system is very effective, but comes at the expense of large power wastage. As a matter of fact, in my simulations, it curtails 70.24% of active power produced, and that's very substantial. So my final thoughts is that PV inverter control is inexpensive, highly effective method of controlling voltage. The Australian New Zealand standard 4777, which is to do with inverter requirement standards, has been recently updated to enforce inverter control in every single new rooftop solar system. So every single rooftop solar system being installed from now onwards will have PV inverter control. So we can see that this solution is going to be more widespread used as we move forward. PV inverter control, as we've seen before as well, results in large wastage of clean and affordable solar energy, and that's a shame because we could be using this good energy. And PV power generation can be further utilized if the demand and generation were more correlated. And that's why I brought back this graph here. If we could correlate this demand with this generation a little bit more, we could utilize a lot more of this power. And there is where battery energy storage systems come in. If we implement a battery in the network that in the middle of the day goes into charging state, that battery effectively becomes a load. So it consumes power. So instead of we having this line going down here, we would actually have this line heading up and following the generation behavior during the day. And so we would be charging the battery all throughout the day. We won't have any over voltage because all that power is going to the battery, is no longer staying there, creating over voltage in the network. And then at night, when everyone comes home, we could use that energy that is stored in those batteries. And at night, during these periods, that's the peak consumption period. So retailers will be charging energy at the highest price. So instead of that, we could be using the energy that is stored in the community batteries. So we'd be saving consumers a lot of money and also mitigating the issue of overvoltage. And this battery here is already in use in Narara, in New South Wales Central Coast, and there's many others in the pipeline coming out in Queensland and in New South Wales. So this, I believe, will be a widespread solution that will be very beneficial for this issue. I hope that this presentation was understandable and enjoyable to you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take some.
Thank you so much, Goncalo. That was amazing. I really appreciate that when people share their research, they share it in sort of layman's terms, because there are sort of non-technical people within the industry as well, myself included. So it's really fantastic. Let's go to those questions. So we go. Wow, we've got a few here for you as well. So, question, isn't it possible to divert the curtailed power towards a storage facility like the Tesla storage plant in South Australia? Is that an option?
Well, I imagine that this question was written before I got to the batteries part, but yeah, so that's the idea, is to store this excess power in energy. The battery that you're mentioning in South Australia is more of a transmission battery, so those are massive batteries. And they are more concerned with the transmission side of the network. The batteries that I mentioned for this project are more in the distribution, so closer to home, in your neighborhoods and such. But yes, you are absolutely right. A very good solution for this is batteries. So yeah, you're right.
Did you discover any areas which can prompt further research as part of your thesis? For example, any policy openings or techno-economic analyses that could be done?
Great question. 100%. Yes, it's, to be honest, it's never ending, because I started looking at what can I do, and I only had 4 months to do this project. So my academic supervisor actually told me, calm down, do just this, and then if you want to continue, you can carry on later. It's very interesting as well that you mentioned the economical aspects of it, because with the issues of overvoltage and storing energy and then using the energy later on, there would have to be very good accountability to, who provided this power, where did it come from, who's consuming it now. So that is a very good question, and there will be a lot of research needed to actually fine tune all the dots to make all this happen. 100%.
I guess this is kind of linked to what do you hope happens with your research? Who could use this information? What can they do with it?
There is some information out there already concerning this topic. This is not incredible novel, what I just created here. I found that there was no one actually looking at the consequences of power curtailment and suggesting a solution to it. And that's why I tried to go a bit down this path. Mind you as well that there was a lot of other sides of this research project that I didn't include here because of time restraints, and also I didn't want to bore you to death. But there were other things such as network losses, the reliance of the network on utility power supply. What I hope happens is with presentations such as this, that I make you aware of this and potentially spark some interest in you, and you can then obviously build upon this and do your own research. I intend to actually keep pursuing this as I move forward. I'm already in a team at Griffith University with a couple of PhD students, and we intend to pursue this a little bit further. So I hope this is just the first step of something that could grow into something even more interesting.
Oh, does that mean that you might be going into some postgraduate research positions, Goncalo?
No, not right away. I don't think so. I have a graduate program lined up, and I intend to follow through with that. But maybe in the future, I find this interesting, and I like it. So yeah, it's a possibility.
What's your advice for third year students wanting to pick a topic for their final year thesis? Is that when you normally pick your topic? Is it third year, or do you normally pick it at the beginning of your fourth year?
Well, I had to pick at the beginning of my fourth year, but I was already kind of preparing what I was going to do from my third year. It's good if you are proactive and try and find something that interests you, because otherwise you can just be allocated something that you don't find really exciting, and it's always a bit harder when you have to do something you're not incredibly interested in. But my advice would be get a summer internship. And if you get a summer internship, you get involved with some work, and when you're out there in the industry, then you realize, all right, what's important, what's happening, what can actually be useful, and then you're doing a project that you know is useful, that you know is relevant, is not just a project to tick the box. Okay, I've done a project. It's actually something that could lead somewhere. So if you get experience in the industry, you realize what's out there, what's needed, and then you can choose your topic based on that. And then obviously, I would say as well, look for a good academic supervisor. Makes a world of difference, I think.
Did you use software other than Python to complete your thesis project, like MATLAB, Simulink?
No, I use this thing. So OpenDSS is a software that runs simulations and is specific for distribution networks. I didn't use the software though, because there's an emulator that it's a library that you can install in your Python called DSS. All you have to do is just pip install DSS, and then you install your module like you do for NumPy, Matplotlib, any other library. And then there's a tutorial online. It's called Team Nando. If you're interested, you want to have a look. It's called Team Nando, Melbourne University. So this gentleman, Fernando is his name, is a doctor at MLR University, and he has these tutorials on how to use DSS, the DSS module in Python, and it's incredible what you can do with it. So I modeled the whole network in Python. I ran all my simulations in Python. I even got some data visuals in Python with matplotlib, and I also used pandas to export a lot of the data into Excel. And then from Excel, I created my beautiful data visuals that I put in there to explain the results that I gotten.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Goncalo. Now, there's one more question. How can migrant engineers use API opportunities to access such industry connections, events, or internships? I don't know if you want to have a go answering that. I can always fill in the gaps, but migrant engineers, even migrant students can use API opportunities. We have a huge amount of programs that people can, that I shouldn't say huge, we've got a lot of programs that people can get involved in from university to the professional stages of your career that can help connect you with other people in the industry and make connections. We also have a number of, well, we've actually introduced a number of events, some alumni events, which brings our communities together. So you're most welcome to attend those. And then internships, we don't have internships available for professional engineers. They are for our students who are studying towards a career in the power industry, specifically for our scholarship students. So again, I'd probably urge any migrant engineers or migrant students to connect with us on our social channels and our newsletters and take advantage of the opportunities that are there. Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie and welcome to day 2 of the Power Up Program Summit. We'd like to welcome everyone who has come online so far and everyone who will be joining us over the next couple of minutes. But before we begin and before I officially welcome everyone to the Power Up Summit, I would like to give an acknowledgement of country. So as we meet today, connecting a diverse community of people from across Australia, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of these lands and their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to the people, the cultures and their elders past, present and emerging. And with that, I am going to pass over to the chair of the API board, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steph. Thanks, David. And thank you for the opportunity to share a bit of experience with you. Before we get started, I'm keen to know a little bit about you. And so can I ask that you drop into the chat just basically which university or school or whatever, where you're up to, if you like, within your career, your schooling, etc. And that will give me a bit of an idea of sort of who I'm talking to, if you like. Normally I'd sort of go around the room, but at the end of the day, that will take a bit of time with this sort of audience. So if you could do that, QUT, excellent, thank you. Okay, so as Steph said, what I'm going to do is share a little bit of my experience and, hopefully bring life to what, to be honest, is a bit of a challenging topic. It's sort of, people tend not to like to talk about sort of failures. I must say it's pretty uncomfortable for me. So thank you for the challenge, Asta and Steph and David. Hopefully I'll give a reasonable account of the challenge. So what I was going to go through is a little bit of context to sort of help through the story, and then talk through what has been sort of a bit of a 5-year plus journey for myself through what has been a reasonably substantial inverted commas failure and sort of rising from that. So, but before I kick on, sort of like Steph, I would just like to acknowledge the country that I'm on. I'm coming to you from Durra country here in Parramatta. It's something that we take within the industry quite dear to heart, is acknowledging traditional owners, and so taking some time out to do that. Okay, a little bit of context, maybe before I start with what is the electricity industry, maybe a little bit about myself. As sort of Steph and David both said, I've been in the industry for a long period of time, sort of been with the API almost its whole journey, but I've been working in the industry for almost 40 years. Started sort of pretty well fresh out of school, have done a trade as well as now a professional engineer, held many different roles. And the particular role that I hold at the moment is sort of head of asset management. So planning for new assets, planning when we want to replace assets, that type of thing. And sort of that will make sense as I go through this sort of story. Now, in terms of what is the electricity industry, and sort of looking through sort of where you all come from, you've probably got a reasonably good idea, but just sort of making sure electricity distributors sort of sit between the transmission companies and customers in effect, part of that supply chain. We play what is becoming a very increasing role as more and more of our customers look to invest in PV on roofs, batteries, electric vehicles, etc. Really, our challenge is huge as a distribution organisation to help transition away from fossil fuels, and we take that role, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we take that role quite seriously. It's good variety of places that people come from, which is great, right across the country, which is really good. A little bit about who Endeavour is. We're one of 11 distribution companies around Australia. One of the fastest growing, in fact, arguably the fastest growing. Western Sydney is a happening place. Brand new airport in the middle of that, so enormous job creation. It's seen as the place to hopefully solve some of the housing issues that we have. So a lot happening in our patch. We also see ourselves as a bit of an innovative organisation. And so Steph mentioned as we were sort of warming up, we've recently won some awards in and around that, which is sort of part of our DNA. The other thing that's sort of reasonably important is that we're partially privately owned. In fact, the 51% privately owned. And the reason I mention that is because private shareholders have very, very different expectations of organisations like mine when compared to government organisations. And again, that's sort of part of the story. So a bit about the story. So I started in this gig, it would be around 2017, 2018. We were sold, it's actually a 99-year lease, but sold to a private consortium back in 2017. And I was thrown this role of helping us prepare for the regulatory determination. Now, to explain why that's so important is, as a regulated business, our income is completely fixed. We cannot vary, in reality, our income. Doesn't matter how much energy flows through our network, whether it's 1 kilowatt hour or 1 million kilowatt hours. It doesn't matter how many customers we've got, whether it's 1 or 1 million, our income is fixed. Now, what that means is that every 5 years, it is so important that we get the income side of the equation right. And so I was thrown that challenge, in 2017. Okay, put the technical part of our regulatory submission together and let's secure as much income as we possibly can. And so that's really where this story starts. It was a very short period of time, arguably too short, and we had brand new shareholders that had huge expectations for this asset that they've just bought. They paid well over $20 billion to secure their 51% interest in Endeavour, and so they wanted a return, and they wanted that pretty quickly. So what happened? Well, here's the failure bit. We got about $1 billion less than we were looking for. And that primarily came down to how well or how not so well people like myself, in fact myself, sold the story. And so the way that regulatory processes work is that there's really 4 steps. There is essentially we put in a submission, the regulator respond to that draft, we then put in a final, and the regulator then determine. So we got to the end of those 4 steps and the regulator said, nope, we do not like what you've put forward. We will give you $1 billion less than what you've asked for. Now, in anyone's money, $1 billion is an enormous amount of money. When you've just freshly bought an organisation like Endeavour, that is an enormous amount of money. And I genuinely thought I was out looking for a new job at that point. It was a genuine low point in my career. A lot of soul searching. Now you can see on the screen there some of the comments that were made. Now they might look a little benign. In regulatory speak, that's about as heavy as criticism as you get. When regulators say that they cannot essentially accept what you're doing, that really means that you're way off. Now, I've included in this screen a photograph of an asset catching fire, and that was at the core of where we went wrong, in that I used images like that, I used rationale like that with the regulator to say that's why we needed money. In order to avoid fires like that, assets catching fire, we need money. The problem is with that is it's extremely emotive. It's not based in fact. Yes, that accident quite obviously happened, but really it doesn't talk to the way that the regulator talks. And so it was almost like the regulator was speaking one language and we were speaking another. And really, as I said, it was a real dawning moment for me personally to see that I was so far off what was expected, after at that point, sort of almost 30 years of working in the industry, to be that far off was actually really quite a challenging moment to realize that. So what did we do? Well, we actually went back to absolute basics. I taught myself economics, pulled every economics textbook I could from the local university, podcasts, all sorts of stuff, to really learn a brand new language, but a brand new way of thinking about things. And then led my team through that. Every day I'd learn something, I'd then try and roll my team through that. Sort of the basics of how to think about justifying things from an economic point of view is very, very different. What it requires is essentially us to understand what will happen into the future, be able to predict that with certainty, be able to understand likelihood and consequence, and then be able to quantify that impact. And so we developed a way of quantifying the benefit of keeping the lights on. We quantified a benefit of not having environmental incidents. We quantified the benefit of saving lives. So, and we do. We put a dollar value against all of those things, including a dollar value of not losing lives, because part of what we do is provide safe, a safe supply for our customers. And what does that mean? And so that was quite challenging. It was quite challenging to work our executive through that, our board through that. They did not want to quantify those things, because what comes with quantifying those things is there are some things that are below that level and some things that are above that level. And that's sort of emotionally very difficult to sort of get your head around. But it's a worthwhile thing to do, because then you're using the same language as regulators and ultimately with customers. We also came up with this concept of sort of this 3-step process of going through and putting a portfolio of investments together that we felt we needed to move forward with. And you'd see on the screen there those 3 steps. But simplistically, what we're looking to do is prove that there are more things that we need to do or want to do than we have money or people to do. Because as one of the, we developed a reference group as we went through this process, and one of those people said to me quietly, he said, it's actually not the regulator, when they look at what you're trying to put forward, they don't really look at what you're trying to do. They look at what you're not doing. What are the things that you've decided not to go ahead with? What are the things that have fallen below that line? Because that tells you how rich the things are above the line. Everybody puts forward things that they think needs to be done. That's an easy thing to do. What's harder is to work out, well, okay, what will I not do? And so that concept, and I came up with this concept of a lolly jar, and that's what the symbology is on the right-hand side there of the screen. We've got this lolly making machine that sort of comes up and determines that there are this many lollies that goes into the big jar. There are some that we reject. And then, however, we take from that big jar and put in the little jar, and it's the little jar that we go forward with. And that optimization process of working out which of the things that you need to do, that you think you need to do, that you'll actually go forward with. Customers and engaging with customers was an enormous part of what we did. And so, as I said, we put together a reference group of people that understand our industry but advocate on behalf of customers. It's super important to have those people that will actually critique what you're doing. The sort of the frenemy thing, that they're a friendly enemy. They are somebody that will advocate on behalf of their customers, the people that they represent, but they're honest enough to be able to give you very frank feedback. And we spent a lot of time developing a group that would be able to do that. We also developed a customer group, and this is a group that were just mums and dads or business owners, etc. And we walked them through over successive, basically a lot of stuff on Teams as well as some stuff in person over a long period of time, well over a year. We work through, how does the industry work? How do we make decisions? What are those trade-offs? How does the whole thing work? In fact, they sort of came out to be almost sort of pseudo engineers in the amount of effort we put into sort of ensuring that these people understood how the whole thing works. And they helped us enormously, because we would then put propositions to them. Well, should we maintain to this standard or that standard? Should we be looking to improve things or hold things the same? Should we be investing in assets that will improve people's capability, our customers' capability to export solar onto the system? Should we be investing in batteries? Should we be investing in preventing bushfires? How far should we go to be to invest in preventing bushfires? What is the responsibility of customers versus what is our responsibility? All these things we tested with this group over hours and hours and hours, and that really helped us enormously. Now, the reason that we did that is when you think about a regulatory solution or a regulatory submission, that yes, you normally think about two parties, but again, going to this sort of failure theme, back in 2018-19, we just really thought about two parties, ourselves and the regulator. But really, it's that third party, the customers, that are the most important. And that was part of that failing, if you like. We assumed we understood what our customers want, and that's an absolute failing. And so by getting the customer so deeply involved, they actually sit between ourselves and the regulator. And then ultimately, they start to advocate on behalf of of ourselves to the regulator. And that's where we got to towards the end of this journey. And so, as I said, an enormous amount of engagement, hours and hours and hours, but it really started to pay off towards the end. It shaped, one of our reference group talked about making they could see that we have changed our position, changed the way we were thinking about what we wanted to do, investments in lots and lots of half-degree movements. But you could see over a long period of time, there was quite a change in the way we were putting forward our submission. And so that brings us to sort of roughly now, if you like, or a little while ago. And that is sort of after this sort of period of sort of basically very, very significant redesign and process change, we got to the back end in 2023. And I talked a little bit before about this sort of two-step process. So step one being, we put a submission together. Step two being the AER respond to that draft. Step three being we put a second one together. The fourth step being the AER make a determination. We got to the end of step two and we were done. The AER accepted our step. In fact, they accepted our step one, which is unheard of in this industry. And so to go from 5 steps, if you like, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 being that sort of final determination, because at the end of the day, we couldn't agree to meet, to actually agreeing after the end of the first was just an enormous turnaround. And again, you can potentially see from the tone of that feedback, enormous change. And, I must say, super proud of my team for the amount of change, super proud of the organisation, because you can see that there is such a change in how we're both perceived, but also in how we've gone about putting our submission together. And it's jumped us really from sort of right at the back end of the pack in terms of this type of thing to the front end, which is great. And so, well, where does that land us? What is the true sort of benefit? What have we truly learned? Well, yes, there's been a successful outcome in terms of the regulatory submission. And so that has certainly been a learning from that early failure. But what it has meant is that we've now got this platform that we can go forward with. What I've shown here is our current strategy and sort of very different looking strategy, but the organisation now is committed to decarbonising, and it's not just decarbonising what we do. It's not just becoming sort of carbon neutral from our perspective. It's actually from our customers' perspective. So what we're really looking to do is ensure that our customers essentially are using a fully decarbonised grid. That means that they're using electric vehicles rather than fossil fuels. It means that essentially that there is as much generation as use coming from renewable sources within our network. And we've set ourselves that as a stretch target by 2035, and that will require a lot more investment. It will require investment well beyond just keeping the lights on, just ensuring that our customers are safe, just ensuring that we don't have environmental incidents. But the regulators now are open to this. They're open to this because we've got the credentials of going through that process. And so in my mind, this particular platform, this strategy owes itself right back to that failure that occurred back in sort of 2018-19 when we put that submission together that was essentially not accepted at all. We're now in a position where we can really genuinely help our customers going forward because of that failure, that sort of essentially that sort of assumption that we made that turned out to be a very poor assumption back in 2018. So that's my little story. I'll stop sharing now and give you all sort of a chance to think about some questions, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Peter. What a huge piece of work that came out of that, I guess, that failure that you've led within your team. I was just sort of trying to wrap my head around all this work that you've done. And I'm glad that there's some questions there because we do have a little bit of time for questions before we move over to our second speaker. So the first question that I've got here is, what are Endeavour Energy's competitive advantages compared to other players in the market?
So it's a great question, actually. So I would say that our competitive advantage comes from our size. We are neither a very small organisation nor a very large organisation, which means that we've got enough capacity as an organisation to undertake some degree of innovation, some degree of new, as well as the, sort of keeping the lights on and doing all of that good stuff that our customers expect, but not too large that we get held back by sort of bureaucracy. And so, that helps us be innovative. It helps us try new things. The fact that I can bump into the CEO and say, hey, how about this, in a relatively small organisation really helps us a lot. And so I'd say that's almost become our special sauce, that we're a smallish organisation that really prides itself as punching above its weight.
I love that, the special sauce. What was your biggest lesson on influencing and leading people, I guess, within the organisation and maybe the customers and your reference group to move forward with the strategy that you proposed?
I think I think the biggest lesson was that don't underestimate the capability of customers, reference groups, etc., to understand the challenge that we have. Take the time, explain in ways that can be understood, but don't underestimate that, because you actually get gold from that interaction. You get really good, meaningful suggestions, and we still get them, which is really good. And so, I think as an industry, we've sort of expected that our customers won't understand how difficult it is to do our job. They actually can. That's been quite a lesson.
We've got two more questions that we'll quickly get through. What are the main current and future challenges you foresee in the energy industry?
Okay. To be honest, I think the biggest challenge is we're not quite sure what the future brings, right? Sort of how quickly will decarbonisation happen? How much will our customers really truly invest in rooftop PV and electric vehicles versus the large, renewable energy zones? How quickly will industry look to decarbonise themselves? These are the biggest challenges. I think the pathway is generally known. It's just the speed in which we're going to get there. And so therefore, how quickly have you got to move in order to keep pace or even keep ahead of that? That to me is, I think, our biggest challenge.
Well, we know that Endeavour Energy have set the challenge of 2035 of decarbonising themselves. The last question, I'm not too sure if it's relevant for you, but what was your trade background? Did you have a...
I was an electrician before I came electrical engineer. Did 4-year apprenticeship, climbed poles and repaired appliances and all that sort of stuff before I became an engineer. Which has been good.
That's fantastic. And yesterday our first speaker was Jim Riley, who is on the webinar today, and he shared his story from trade to engineer. So he's currently going through his degree, and he was sharing the amount of knowledge, industry knowledge that he gained through obtaining a trade first has helped him incredibly. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Peter, for your time. I am going to stop sharing my screen and let our second speaker, Luvha, share her experience of failure.
Hi everyone, my name is Luvha. I'm currently in the last year of my master's program, so like 2 more weeks to go before I graduate, and I'm studying at the University of Western Australia. So over the last summer, I got to intern at Horizon Power on the standalone power system. Sorry, a little bit nervous. On the standalone power systems project team. And got to go on site, see a few different things. And one of the experiences I had, we had, a little bit of a situation, and I'll be sharing my story of how we dealt with that and how sort of the approach that I'm taking in learning to deal with failure as it comes at uni, at work. And I want to emphasize that this is very much how I'm dealing with it and my experiences, not necessarily like how it might work for you, but let's see how it goes. Okay. So just before we start, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm presenting. So I'm in Perth, and that's the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. So my lemon, right? I thought it'd be cool to sort of take this analogy. My sour thing that happened. I went out on site with a team member that was going to be in Esperance doing a few different jobs for the project team. And I was like, a trip to Esperance for work? And like, I get to see a little bit of the town and get to see some of the work that I'd been doing in real life. Like, hell yeah. I got to go for a few days, and one of the jobs that we were looking at was to commission a generator controller, which had been installed, and get it online so that we could control it remotely. The generator was like a 2.5 hour drive away from Esperance, so we really needed, all of these standalone power systems need to be able to be accessible remotely to some extent, right? So we couldn't find the controller's IP address when we got there, turned everything off. Then we're checking around, can't find the IP address. Have a look, where is it? Gone through pretty much the entire settings, and then we call IT. IT isn't quite sure either. And they don't know what we're seeing, so it's really difficult. So that's what the issue was that we were dealing with. And so the lemon slices, right? Let's breaking up the problem. Really remote work area. Obviously, we had to travel down, so that made it tricky as well. And there was limited availability of tools and spare parts because we were 2 hours out of town in a town that's already quite remote. And the next thing, so limited telecoms coverage. I had no reception because I didn't preempt that Optus wouldn't have coverage that far out. I also didn't quite know how far we would be going out, so there's some difficulty with communication and also just internet there. Some time delays. Obviously, there was just when we had issues, having to wait for people to get back to us. And then because our visit was quite short, we were there to get the job done and we were leaving. So any delays made it really tricky as well. So like, if we didn't get the job done that day, it was hard to come back to that site. Then the lack of accessibility of resources. So normally I just Google. I'm like, oh, I can't find something. Let me hop on Google and like try and pull it up. Couldn't really do that. Had really, really bad internet. So even if things would have been there, that would have been helpful for us, just couldn't access it. And then we just had very little idea on what was causing the issue. So we thought the issue might be getting it all connected, but not that we couldn't even get started with getting it connected because we didn't know what the IP address was, and we're like, it should be there. Thought like maybe do we need to set it, but just didn't have any information on it either. And so, trying to make lemonade out of the situation, make it something we could work with. Because we'd flown out for the job, so like let's see how much we can get done here now so that the next trip to get this equipment running, or whoever from Horizon in Esperance could like get up and running, if we could collect more information. So that was the first thing. Like took so many photos of all the different settings where we were going through and made sure that we tried to collect everything. And then reached out to colleagues in the area with similar experience to ask for advice because some other similar controllers had been commissioned there. So like, did you come up with it? Did you find this issue? And like, what did you do maybe? And then we attempted to contact the person that they installed the controller. But turns out that they were on holiday, so it was really difficult to then contact them as well. And then from that, we're like, oh, what else can we do? So there was another site nearby that had the same controller, so we drove down there a few times just to see like, are we missing something? But that controller, like the settings all looked pretty different on it, so that didn't quite work either. Then like kept Googling, went a lot of searching, trying to figure out like what's going on, what can we do. And then attended to some other jobs in the meanwhile because we had I think 2 other jobs that needed to be done around the area. So did that while we were waiting for responses. And then in the end, just as we were leaving, we were like, oh, maybe we can contact the manufacturer's tech support. Maybe they'll know what's going on with their equipment. And luckily they had like one of their call centers ran, so in WA it was like 5 p.m. Like 4 p.m. It was late. So that their other call center that was in um in the east that had closed, but we were able to get hold of someone, and then they're like, oh, maybe you can try this, or like maybe you can check this. And so we were able to from then basically identify the key issue, that what it was that was stopping the job from progressing, which was that the wrong card had been installed. And that's just like, it's the communication card that could be installed. It was like the one that was there was the wrong one, but the right one was the same size and it was like hot swappable. So definitely something that could have just like been a mistake if you're not quite sure like which one it could be and stuff. So yeah, just not quite knowing a lot of different variables and having had a few people on the job just made communication a little bit difficult as well. But that's how we like were able to make something out of it. Just trying, having lots of stabs at different things. And I would say like as an intern being there, I was sort of like, I don't quite know how to be helpful, because I'm not fully sure about all the technical things that are going on, and I wasn't involved with the job itself, of getting the new generator installed and having the controller installed. So I think what I would recommend for any other interns that will be going out on site over the summer is just like, oh wait, I have my top tips. So kind of taking on like what I would recommend is one, to realize that like expecting the unexpected when it comes to commissioning. There was a lot of on the spot problem solving that we had to do, and lots of like thinking back and forth, being like, oh, maybe this and maybe that, and just having a go at a few different things. So don't hesitate to get involved, even if you're unsure. Like, um, the team member that I went with was really encouraging for me to like try and have a talk with him and see if there was any different lines of thinking that we could go down. It was also the two of us that had gone, so I think it was helpful if I where I got involved and tried to help him a little bit where possible. Also, like when going to remote sites, if you're not with Telstra, possibly consider buying a prepaid SIM for reception. Normally, if I've gone on longer trips, I get a SIM, but this time it just wasn't in my radar. So even if you know, sometimes it's like good to have a little checklist. It also means that one, like you can research any issues that you might be having, and yeah, but also like the other thing is like safety, because you want to make sure that if something happens to the person you're with, or just like anything happens, you try and have something that gives you a better chance at being able to contact someone. Have offline resources ready. I will be now going in with as many manuals downloaded for jobs as I can. And then bonus, I carry snacks, because sometimes it can get like unexpectedly become quite a long day. So my favorite is protein up and go, because I've got like hydration and also something to keep me full. Oh, 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 sorry. Ah, hmm. My transitions are automatic. Okay, sorry. I'm not sure what's happened with my transitions, but so this section I wanted to, I guess, give a little bit of advice on how I'm learning to deal with failure and trying to just sort of, like, because a lot of this stuff is so new, and I'm pretty early on in my career as well. So really trying to process and get advice and a bunch of things. So I'd say like dealing with failure, like Peter said, it is a very personal experience. And how everyone deals with it is quite different. So I think like having self-awareness of how you deal with it and being aware of that is like the most important thing, and having the emotional maturity to be able to like process your failures and think things through. So take your lemons and think about like how you'd like to slice them, and then from that, like, add your sugar. What are things that you can add to help you cope with the failure? So for me, something to think about is to contextualize the situation. A lot of the times in my head, it can be a bigger deal than it actually is. It can feel like a lot more world ending, maybe, is like a way to put it. But I think like in that kind of case, it's good to have like a perspective shift. So I'll like talk to a mentor, colleague, my manager, friends, and sort of try and get feedback from them on what they actually think. Of course, like you have to be receptive to the feedback that if you're asking for it. I think like it is important to try and get feedback from people who like you have similar values with as well, because not feedback from everyone is necessarily going to be applicable to you and your situation. And then like self-compassion, I think it's like quite easy to be harsh on yourself. Because maybe like for me, I'm like, oh, I have high standards for myself, so that and then like having more of a growth mindset, because reflecting on my mistakes has helped me think about like, oh, the next time something happens, how can I improve? And still like considering that as much as I try, it might not work out all the time. So like at some point you're gonna fail. So like sort of an advice that my friend gave me is that if you're letting your fear hold you back, then you're never really gonna keep trying different things, and at some point like some things might work out. So like don't let it hold you back. And sometimes like even all of that is not quite enough. And so sometimes you just gotta fake it till you make it, and just like have try and have confidence in yourself, because like sometimes when you're acting it, it helps you feel really comfortable in the situation, eventually feel comfortable in the situation. Yeah, and then from that, like add your liquid. So what would you like to add to your lemonade? I'd say that also when you're dealing with failure initially, for me, it's like it can be such a physical experience as well, that like I go wash my face with cold water because I'm like, oh, I'm really warm. Get outside, get some sunlight, listen to music. Like, so these are just some things that like you can do on the spot, because I think the previous things are things you do over time. This is just like in the moment to try and help. Exercise and stretch, just if you're like, I don't want to exercise, like I don't want to fully go run, then like getting a little bit of stretch is always good. And then deep breathing, just like it's crazy how much breathing helps when if you're in a panic. And so I also asked some of my friends, because again, dealing with failure is such a personal experience, that I was like, what are some things that my friends like to do? And one thing was like knowing your whys, like why do you do something? And what do you care about? Knowing your values. So something that like my friend does is think about the 5 whys. So like keep questioning it a few times of why something happened and why you care about it to help you get to the crux of the problem. Something else a little bit more engineering focused is like doing a little risk assessment. Is your failure and what you're worrying about as impactful as you're thinking, or is there some ways that you're preempting some failures that you could learn to deal with? So something like a fishbone chart or a risk matrix scale. Those are really good. I understand this is like, it's funny because it's kind of like, oh, it's such an engineering thing, but they're really good tools and they're developed to be helpful in this sort of situation. And then final, sometimes you just gotta write it all out. Just gotta brain dump it and see what your thoughts are, because they start to look a bit more silly when they're written out than when they're in your head. If you're like catastrophizing a bit. Um, and then from that, we have our final drink, which is like really nice, refreshing lemonade. I will say I made myself a little lemonade today. Because it's like almost uni's done, been dealing with failures here and there, so make yourself a nice little refreshing lemonade. And yeah, that's my presentation.
That's amazing. Thank you, Luvha. That was that was a really fun presentation, and I really like that you have turned this failure, or this thing that has gone wrong, into a real learning experience where you can sort of pass on that feedback of how you dealt with it, how other people dealt with it, and of course bring in those engineering, the things that engineers love, the matrices, the risk
Yep.
assessments, everything. That's fantastic. Let's get into some questions. For those who are online, remember to scan that QR code and ask some questions. So first one, as a fifth and final year student of electrical engineering, what is your advice to those first and second year students who are currently watching you?
I would say that try and do as much, like if there's anything you're interested in, you have to like go for it, because the advantage of being like first, second year, even like third year student, is that you have a bit more time in your schedule and you can just explore a variety of different fields and what you like. Like for me, I worked in a few other industries before. I was like, no, I think I like power. I think like that's where I want to spend like more like where I want to start my career and where I want to be. But I got to that from having explored and worked in different industries and worked in different roles. So like trying technology and trying the resources industry. So yeah, and like you have the time, especially if you start a bit earlier. I'd also say like involved in clubs. That was the biggest thing for me, was being a younger student and having the older students be there as a mentor and a guide to me, to be like, I don't really know how to write my cover letter, or I don't really know what makes a good resume. Could you help me? Like, I wrote this, could you look over it for me, and give me some advice? And I think having access to that network early on is also super helpful.
Fantastic. What were some of the other challenges that you faced on your placement?
A lot. I feel like I'd say like there's a lot when you're starting. That for me, it's like nerves, because you're starting, you don't really know the team, you don't really know the work, and trying to integrate into the team. So that was like at the beginning challenging, because there's a big history of the team when you come in. So but that I found it really helpful, to at least first start with the interns and get to know each other well and build that little support network, because all the other interns are probably feeling a similar way to you, and then getting to know the grads a bit more as well, so that you have peers around you. I think a big challenge for me was that my team at the time, the team I came into, was very small. So it was my manager and I in Perth, and then the other team members were in the regions. So even though the team itself was slightly bigger, it was mostly my manager and I at the time. And so, because he's really busy, trying to find networks outside of just my manager was really helpful as well, because, a lot of the times they're in meetings, you can't always they're not always there if they're not there every second of the day. So yeah, I'd say that.
And last question, do you think you are now better equipped for the next failure?
Yeah, for sure. After being the project, starting in the team, I was quite nervous, I'd say. And it was the first time I was doing really more technical work as well. And I got some good feedback from my manager on how to approach some of my work. So, because he's you're doing good work, but you're quite nervous, but and I wanted everything to be really good. So I would spend a lot of time making sure that everything was right and stuff. And yeah, getting good feedback from my manager to be no, know what your assumptions are, know why you've made certain decisions, and then we can discuss it from there. If you need any help, come and ask, have a chat. And so I think from that, for sure, I guess that's not necessarily a failure, but
yeah, wonderful.
Growing, I would say.
Hello and welcome to the final day of the API's Power Up Summit, day 3. My name's Esther. I'm the marketing coordinator at the API, and I'm joined by my colleague and CEO of the API, David Pointing, today. And there he is. First, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I present, which is Mianjin, Brisbane. I pay my respects to the people, the cultures, and their elders, past, present, and emerging. So I just wanted to introduce our speakers today. First up, we will be having Lucy from Energy Queensland presenting. She will be speaking on Queensland's energy storage journey through the eyes of an intern. She will be followed by Ash, who is a graduate engineer at API member Ausgrid, and he'll be speaking about his journey to becoming a power graduate.
Perfect, thank you. So hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. I am excited to speak to you guys, a little bit nervous, but I hope that you gain something valuable from the insights that I have to share. So as was said, I'm Lucy Webster. I'm in my 5th and final year of a dual degree in electrical engineering and chemical science at QUT, so that's in Brisbane. I know it's a pretty unique degree. I have only really met 2 other people who have studied the same, but I think it complements my passion in facilitating our transition to cleaner energy sources, which I've had the fantastic opportunity to get involved with whilst being at Energy Queensland. So I started at Energy Queensland in the summer intern period of 2021 and 2022. I have worked there ever since then, with a brief stint at PowerLink over the 22 and 23 summer period through API. Before I get in, I would also just there we are, sorry. I'd like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nation people of the land where I am calling in from today, so Brisbane. I acknowledge these people as the First Nation owners of the land in which we meet. I acknowledge their customs, creations, and teaching spirits, and recognise that these lands have always been places of research, teaching, and learning. In terms of what we're going to get into today, I thought I'd give a brief overview of Energy Queensland's energy storage journey from my perspective as an intern. I'll also go through what I've kind of got become involved in whilst there, as well as some challenges and opportunities that I have discovered through working there, and then my key takeaways. So with the 2022 release of the Queensland Energy and Jobs Plan, which is something released by the Queensland government, the renewable energy transition is more prevalent here than ever. The Queensland government have an accelerated target of 25 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2035, which corresponds to approximately 80% of the total energy production required at that time. With the decommission of historically reliable and synchronous generators like coal plants and steam turbines, the safeguard of an ever-present power supply is no longer guaranteed, given renewables' reliance on uncontrollable environmental factors, for example, like solar and wind. So to facilitate the integration of this renewable energy, a mechanism that can spatially and temporally shift the generated energy from time of production to time of demand is required. So batteries act as a prime candidate to fill this production load gap, which has been identified by the Queensland government in this energy and jobs plan, with plans of investing approximately $500 million into grid and community batteries. Given Australia and Queensland is the epicentre for solar, Energy Queensland has seen a large magnitude of reverse flow amongst the network during the middle of the day, whereby people are not home to use the solar generated. This has led to a load profile coined the duck curve. This issue, the duck curve, can be mitigated with the use of batteries, which can soak up some of that daytime solar. Batteries can also offer benefits in grid support, so they offer the ability to absorb or inject reactive power, and they can also offer frequency support by rapidly discharging or charging through the mechanism known as FCAS, so that's Frequency Control Ancillary Services. There is also an economic function associated with batteries, so this is energy arbitrage, so charging when the spot price is low and then discharging back to the grid when it is high to make some money off of that. And then, of course, there's also retailer trading of the batteries. In terms of Energy Queensland's program of works, it is ever expanding. So as you can see, there's 50 plus batteries planned with the ability to store over 800 megawatt hours of Queensland produced solar. So this obviously requires quite an extensive workload from a bunch of people across Energy Queensland. So we have experts from design, planning, protection, SCADA, cybersecurity and maintenance all involved. In terms of the type of batteries that Energy Queensland are rolling out, it includes local network connected batteries, so on your top left. So these are often adjacent to or within substations and are connected into the 11 or 22 kV side of the network. These are normally 4 megawatt to 8 megawatt hour systems and are designed to store energy produced by local rooftop solar. We have our neighborhood batteries on our right there. And these are pole and pad mount batteries. So at the moment, it's a trial installation out in Ipswich with plans to extend. So as you can see, these are situated on concrete poles. So they are a bit of a sight, a bit of a new type of experience that Energy Queensland is going through. But I suppose it is very similar to the pole mounted transformers that we have. And then we have our community batteries. So these are also pad mount and are part of an ARENA funded trial, I suppose. So these are 90 kilowatt and 120 kilowatt hours. And then not pictured is our LRES community batteries. So these LRES stands for local renewable energy zones. So this involves creating a semi-microgrid within the community to maintain a self-sufficient energy system for that specific community. So in terms of my journey in the energy storage team at Energy Queensland, when I first started at Energy Queensland, I was under the GM for energy storage. So he was the sole member of his team at the time and was essentially laying the foundations for the energy storage team and what it is today. Therefore, you can definitely understand that the energy storage team is relatively new, with their concrete inception occurring at the beginning of 2023. So it's a very fast-paced, very interesting and adaptive environment. Currently, the team sits at approximately 15 plus people, with ongoing expansion occurring every day, essentially. This expansion will help support the immense amount of integration of batteries required as part of the Queensland government's objective. While I've been part of the team, I've been exposed to both technical engineering knowledge as well as a greater organisational structure and understanding. So some of the main tasks that I've been working on whilst I've been there has been the HV BESS, so Battery Energy Storage System site selection. So HV are just those community-based batteries. So there's 4 megawatt, 8 megawatt hours. We refer to them as HV. So through these tasks, I assisted in analysing the feasibility of a site based on the potential for the BESS to provide network support, if there's space available for the site to sit, the proximity to sensitive users, as the inverters can have a noise associated with them, as well as the cooling systems of the batteries. If there was heavy vegetation or waterways nearby, just in case of the unlikely event that something were to impede the battery performance and something were to escape from the battery. And then flooding risk and other land use considerations generally. So once determined a site was suitable, I would overlay a BESS system onto existing drawings to make sure that it would fit in the designated land available for the BESS, and as well as to make sure that the electrical connectivity was adequate for the site. And through this, I was able to visit a bunch of sites in Southeast, so quite close to Brisbane area, to make sure that what we had initially determined as appropriate was actually feasible in the real world. So this involved liaising with the civil team, network planners and designers so that we all came to a unanimous conclusion regarding the site and its placement before it entered detailed design. I was also involved in electrical drawing drafting. So this involved looking at circuits and making sure that the components were correct for their functionality, that they were named correctly as part of Energy Queensland standards, and that they were overall suitable for what was required. I was also involved with scope document development. So this was for contracting out tasks to various contractors, as well as creating dashboards, which involved data analysis. So this was to be able to capture exactly how the batteries are performing on a day-to-day basis so that it can be elevated if something seems to be awry with the batteries. And then as well, just general report and grant writing, so reporting on risks, grant writing for the arena-funded batteries, so as part of that local battery scope. Analysis of circuit components, so making sure that they were suitable within their desired application. So, for example, looking at circuit breakers and their rating, as well as burdens placed on current transformers. And then we had site visits again. So this was more generally just to see the batteries themselves out in the fields for the established sites, as well as go to the manufacturers' warehouses to see exactly how they're putting in place the various amendments that we had made to their design, as well as conducting literature reviews. So this has been really helpful as I am in my final year, so we did have to conduct a literature review as part of our thesis. So in this circumstance, I was looking at how different battery chemistries interacted with each other in terms of their pros and cons and what would be most suitable for our network and our needs as a distributor. Of course, with this being a relatively new technology for this industry, challenges are expected and are unavoidable. So some of the primary challenges faced for the energy storage team, particularly at Energy Queensland, to be able to maintain the required rate of integration includes standardization. So this includes standardization of engineering design drawings to reduce man hours required for each particular site. So obviously a turnkey solution is desired where we can just plonk and play essentially, but we do need some type of dynamic element to that solution at the same time, given that there are so many factors to be assessed when choosing a site for the batteries. Civil design, that is one of the major expenses for placing in these batteries, funnily enough. So being able to also include some of that standardization into the civil design, although that's not necessarily part of the day-to-day work of the energy storage team, we do have civil members within Energy Queensland that help us out there. The scale of integration just generally is a major challenge, being able to maintain support from across the organisation when they still have to complete their nominal business as usual works. So knowledge sharing as well. So making sure within the business, knowledge sharing of any challenges faces, what went well, what didn't, is adequately shared amongst the energy storage team and out into the greater organisation, as well as just sharing between distributors across Australia and how they have faced challenges that maybe we haven't yet experienced and how they coped with that. And then bringing customers along on the journey, so ensuring that they understand the importance of these systems and why we need them to achieve the net zero goal. However, we also need to make sure we instill a sense of ownership over this technology for these customers and over that overall energy transition to make sure that they are included and that they do understand how imperative the work that is being done is. And then just generally sustainability. So obviously these systems are resource intensive. There's no way about that. But just making sure that when it comes to end of life, that we do have a plan in place that can adequately remove these technologies and get them recycled or repurposed where necessary. And then just generally, as it is a new technology, it's new to the company, it's new for the industry. So making sure we are operating them in a way that is both useful for the needs of the business, as well as not so in a way as to prematurely shorten the lifespan of the systems. So many battery integrators are also still in their youth. So some of the manufacturers that provide the battery systems to us. So it is kind of turning into a bit of a feedback loop between the manufacturers and the clients to make sure that the product that they provide is fit for purpose and operates as specified in the spec sheets. Of course, with challenges comes opportunities. So although there are many challenges and they can seem a bit daunting when looking at it from a big perspective, it can be argued that they also are all opportunities. As Australia is at the forefront of this industry, we are pioneering the integration of batteries to an extent. So it means we have the flexibility to explore the options, learn and collaborate to make sure we are producing a product that is essential for the power industry, as well as being able to rewrite how the power industry has operated previously. As I close out this presentation, I'd like to share a few key takeaways that I've taken from working in the energy storage team. So I've learnt to speak up. So even as an intern, your insights are valued and you may have something new to say, even though you may not feel that you have enough knowledge to share. It's definitely daunting. I would say I'm definitely generally just a quiet person as it is. So I always found it hard to speak up, but when you did, you realize that, I actually did have something to say that was contributing something meaningful rather than just being quiet. To be open. So always have an open mindset and be willing to learn and change your way of thinking when required. And also don't be scared to break the mold if it is required to accelerate the task that you are needing to complete. So sometimes it can't be perfect and mistakes will be made, but the important thing is to learn from those mistakes whilst also trying to maintain your best work. This on the left here, you can see my GM, Glenn Darlenberg. I think he's been a great leader in terms of teaching me these lessons And I just like this little quote that he has here that we, as an industry Queensland and as the power industry generally, are the future of energy. And it's really a once in a lifetime to be involved in such a drastic transition from non-renewables to renewables. Yeah, that was all I had. Thank you.
Our first question is, do you see the political landscape of Queensland and narrative affect your job or projects?
The general project of works or program of works is unlikely to change, just because I think everyone can agree that this type of technology is the best option that we have at the moment to be able to make sure that we are reaching our already Australia-wide objective of net zero. In terms of particular political dwellings, I don't think I am informed enough to speak directly on how, for example, a next election would affect the program of works, but I believe it's pretty safe.
Yeah. Okay, second question. Someone says that they heard something about salt batteries the other day. And are there any existing or emerging battery technologies you're excited about?
I think one type of battery that's pretty cool is redox flow batteries. So instead of your nominal battery technology where you have the electrolyte encompassed within the cell itself, so you have individual battery cells which are all seriesed and paralleled up to make a bigger system, redox flow involves the electrolyte being in a separate tank itself. So this makes it a lot easier to increase energy and power density. So you just add in another more electrolyte to be able to harness the ability of the existing cells in a way. So it's definitely interesting to look into if you would like to have a look. We do have some redox batteries in our program of works planned as part of stage 4. But the only problem is with these systems that they are quite space intensive in terms of that they take quite a lot of land area, considering that they require a whole tank of electrolyte. And also you also introduce other problems in terms of potential failures because the electrolyte needs to be pumped through the cells, which requires a mechanical component through a pump. So that just offers another touch point that could possibly require fixing.
Yeah, awesome. And what do you think are some of the key challenges facing the energy transition broadly, or which you foresee in the future?
I think product acquisition. So like the whole world is going through the same transition essentially, and there's only a limited number at the moment of trusted battery manufacturers that are producing quality material or quality products to be able to use. So I suppose it is just acquiring the product and making sure that our timeline is indicative of these long lead time items. So that's probably the major challenge I see, just because everyone is trying to do it at the same time, and obviously there will be a bit of a bottleneck going on if they can't get the systems out fast enough. But possibly for Australia generally is just the rate of integration at the moment. It is quite fast, and obviously with these technologies being so new, in Energy Queensland there's only 15 people essentially dedicated day to day to facilitating the integration of these products, whereas it'll turn into something that will need to be a monthly thing. That's system is having to be put in and energized on the spot. So it's just a lot of work essentially.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. So I'm going to go for the shorter question. Sorry for whoever asked this one. How are the Ipswich neighbourhood battery trials being perceived by the public?
I honestly haven't had too much interaction, or like I haven't heard too much about how they are being perceived. But I think I remember on a few site visits, for example, when we went out, people were curious about what was going on and were interested to see what we were doing whilst we were there. So I think it could obviously be a bit mixed, just generally. Obviously, some people are on the one end of the spectrum where they love the idea of it and they understand the purpose of these systems, while other people on the exact opposite and just thinking it's another thing that's being put into the network that's not necessarily required or necessary for the operation of the network. So I suppose, I don't know, haven't heard too much on that. This is just from my personal experience.
So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Ash. He'll be speaking about his journey to being a power graduate.
Okay. All right. So yeah, my presentation won't be as technical as Lucy's. It'll be a bit more about my personal experience as becoming a power graduate, basically. So pretty much the agenda on the list is who I am, beginning of my journey at university, my experiences as an intern, the current position I am in, and my experience as a grad so far, which isn't that long, and pretty much just wrapping it up over giving a basic holistic thoughts about all the different things I've learned and anything I'd do differently if I was coming back into doing it all over again. But before that, pretty much acknowledge the country and pay my respects to the past, present, and the emerging. And yeah, so let's start with who I am. My name's Ash. Hopefully that hasn't changed in the last 5 minutes. That's a picture of me, which was taken a few years ago. But what has changed is my graduation status. So I am officially a graduate from UNSW as of August 2024. Well, that was my last exam. I got my results then, but I actually officially graduated last week, 7 days ago. So yeah, officially a graduate. Completed the Masters of Electrical Engineering and a Bachelor/Honours of Electrical Engineering. And currently I'm back working at Ausgrid as a graduate within the Asset Management and Maintenance team. And I'll speak a bit more about what this team does in the upcoming slides. So in the beginning of my journey, so it all started the day I was born, but I'm guessing that's a bit too far back. So let's just focus at uni. So the first thing, when I started uni, I honestly had no clue what I wanted to do. Truth be told, I didn't know if I wanted to go into the power sector or any other sector. I didn't even know these sectors existed, to be honest. And truth be told, I didn't even know if I wanted to become an engineer. It was kind of just like go with the flow. Engineering sounded cool. Get in there. Thought about electrical engineering as the one engineering that's kind of needed everywhere. Everyone needs power. Everyone needs some sort of electrical work. So I was like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. After that, I had like 5 years on the road, so I could have decided where to go from there. But it was basically until the day where I got my API bursary that I learned more about the power sector. And truth be told, I actually still remember the day I applied for the API bursary scholarship. It's funny, I came home from a good day at uni, had a good group presentation. We were really happy. That's sarcasm, by the way. But yeah, came home, thought, you know what? Worst that can happen is I'll get no email, I'll get rejected, and I can move on with life. So I applied to it, got the API bursary scholarship, and I think that was a very pivotal moment for me, not just getting my foot into the power sector, but also about me and my attitudes towards a lot of opportunities that came my way, and realizing that the worst that can always happen is a no. So you can might as well throw myself into there and chuck myself into the deep end and see what happens after. But yeah, getting into the Power API bursary was a really good opportunity because it gave me chances to speak to industry members who are already working at some sort of organization, power organization, and actually give me insights about what's happening in that organization or what's happening in the industry, learn more about, what's the whole broader industry is about, as opposed to what I thought. Because truth be told, I'm guessing this is as true for all of you guys as it is for me. When we talk about the power sector, we usually always default to talking about, solar panels, wind power, renewable energy, and all the, the dynamic changes that's going to happen. But there's so much more about how do you keep the lights on? How do you make sure that when a person flicks on the power switch, there is power being delivered to them? So that was a really important talk, and like actually understanding the power industry is a lot more than just renewables was a really important thing for me. I learned a lot more about the power sector. So I knew, transmission to distribution, but all the different aspects involved between them, was really, really good. And I'm guessing what's most important for all of us as a uni student, get access to internships and actually be able to work in these organizations and be a part of the system and the industry itself. So my experience as an intern has been quite broad. So I've actually done 3 interns, and I'll be speaking about one of them to you only, which is the Ausgrad internship that I did. But I had an internship at university where I worked directly under a uni professor on a project which was looking at solar cells and how you can improve the quality of them, or like make them less defective if there are some certain types of defects on them. My second internship was at Endeavour Energy, where I was working in the asset management team. And my third internship was at Ausgrad, where coincidentally, and I don't know if it's a conspiracy, but I was put into the asset management team again. So, you know what, it worked out. I was in a good team. I was really happy. But yeah, it's just surprising that I was always in the asset management team. But that's where I'm back at anyways now. But yeah, so my last summer internship, which was over the last summer, so 2023 Christmas, 24 January period, I was in the asset management and maintenance team. And this was basically a team where we look at the different assets that the organization has. So if you think about distribution network, we have a lot of transformers, poles, cables, all these different assets all around the organization, all around the network. And you have to make sure that they're actually lasting and you know where the assets are, you can take care of them, make sure they last as long as possible. And that's pretty much what a lot of the work I was doing. But speaking holistically about the internship, it was a great opportunity where I was able to visit a lot of sites. And that picture is actually very unique because, you know, we're not just, we were just standing out there learning a lot about the transformers that we can see through the gates. We didn't go into the gates, not because we didn't have a key, we forgot, just because the gate was really, really pretty. We just stood there. Anyways, we had access to amazing and incredible engineers and managers that we were able to talk to, ask them about their experiences and learn about, like, you know, what they did when they were coming off university, learning from their kind of perspectives, because they've been there, they've done that, and they're in a really high position now. So kind of like it was really good to talk to those guys and learn about what they've done, how, you know, that can help me. And it was really valuable information that it was really nice to actually hear from them. And screen's lagged. Oh, you're back. Yeah, worked on amazing projects where I was able to present back to the organization, and most importantly, ask many questions. And truth be told, a lot of the time they weren't even engineering related. So like a little feedback that I always love telling people when they ask me about my Ausgrad internships is basically like the way that the tables are formed is like a little C shape. So every time we just sit around the managers and we just basically spin around and start talking to each other about things that aren't related. And just, you know, there's a conversation. Manager felt like they were being left out, so they'll join in and we'll all just talk about things that's not even work related. But these are very, very fun because it actually gave us opportunities to ask questions to it, which, you know, you could have thought they were stupid questions, but they lead on to a conversation where you can ask more deeper questions and understand a lot more about what the industry is, but also just holistically, any questions you might have, you can ask them about that. And the last photo you can see over there is just me presenting back to the organization about the project that I did. And that was a really good opportunity. Like I had some jokes in there and I didn't realize the head of each group would be there. But, you know, still, like, I couldn't back out. I had to keep with the jokes. You know, I went in, everyone laughed, it was good. So yeah, again, going back to over it, it was really good, my internship, because I had access to managers, mentors, and the overall team that really kind of engraved into me the kind of environment that I want to be in my career, like the kind of places and the kind of people that I want to be surrounded by, but also the kind of engineer that I want to be, which was really, really important for me because it kind of taught me the difference between a good engineer who's really happy to share the information, who's really happy to talk about the knowledge, who's really willing to share what they've learned, as opposed to an engineer who'd rather keep all the knowledge and, you know, just go on with that, which really doesn't mean a lot. You're not really sharing anything, sharing innovation. So yeah, that was my experience as an intern, and that was just me presenting back to the organization where I had you can ignore my haircut. I didn't ask for it, but on the other side, that's pretty much a project of what I did. That it's pretty much a comparison between the strength of a pole and the age of a pole, and we were trying to determine if there was a correlation where we could build, as if the reading of the strength of a pole is this much after this many years, can we predict that it's going to fail after this many years? So that was a very, very interesting and a really fun exercise, because I was working with like 500,000 poles. That's pretty fun. So yeah, current position. So I'm back at Osgood working in the same team that I was working in, which is the asset management and maintenance team that I worked with during my summer internship. And I came back because I just loved the team. The manager was great. The people here were really, really good. And to provide you with like a basic overview of what my team does, we basically investigate all the different assets we have, try and basically plan projects, programs to understand, ensure that we can get the maximum value out of each asset. So what this means is, say you have a transformer out there in the field, and transformers typically last 40 years. But with the price that you paid for it, you will only get that money back if you run it for 45 years. So how can you make sure that you can run the asset for 45 years? And if not, how can you make it run for even longer so you're getting more money out of that, or more value out of that asset than you would if you just replace that 40 years every single time? So that's kind of like what the overview, but I guess a really high level of what this team does. But it also, like, it's really important to understand this team is central to the organization. So every single asset, or like pretty much we're a distribution company, and all the electricity is transferred through our assets. So you got to make sure those assets they're like the primary things that the organization has. So how do we make sure they're lasting? The good thing about this team is that every other team eventually will come down to this team, my team, and tell them about, okay, we've got a new asset. How do we plan to make sure this asset stays for as long as possible and incorporates back into the organization? So that's pretty much a holistic overview of what my team does. We also do a lot of monitoring and maintenance activities creation. So what we do is create maintenance activities and determine the frequencies at which they should occur. So, for example, here's a transformer. Every 5 years, we should do this certain type of activities to make sure that we can check they're being maintained. And every 10 years, we can do these more in-depth analyses and investigations to make sure they're also being maintained, and how often we should do them. So basically just make sure they're being maintained in the right amount of time, and we're not wasting too much money having a person go out there when it's not really necessary, like, for example, every couple of months, which is probably not that appropriate, because it'd just be expensive and probably inefficient. And yeah, we pretty much manage all the assets within the Osgrid network. So yeah, the main work that I've been a part of and what I've seen, it has been predominantly data-based. So we use data to build predictive models, to build analysis, and pretty much come to logical conclusions based on what the data tells us. If the data is telling us that after 10 years, the asset doesn't change, why do we even go investigate it within 10 years? Let's investigate it every 20 years, for example. So yeah, it's pretty much a lot of data work, a lot of Excel. I don't really want to talk about Excel. It's driving me crazy right now. But, Excel, Power BI, a lot of these tools, which are really, really interesting, and they're actually really, really cool to learn a lot about statistic modeling. And that I've had really, really good fun with it. And I was just joking about the Excel. I love Excel. But yeah, my current grad role and experience. So far, I've pretty much been in the grad role for about 2 months now. So I started in August. I guess it's been a bit more intense than the internship, because there's more expectations for me to get certain tasks finished a lot quicker, to be able to pick things up. But honestly, it's not been that intense. Like, my manager still knows that I'm still trying to learn. I'm still in that learning phase. I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know everything. So it's not that much different, but it is like, you want to do a lot more because you're here kind of permanently. Well, I'm here kind of permanently. And I've been getting a lot more greater exposure across the business with more projects, which include both long and short term. So this means I'm doing different kind of projects where I'm talking to people in different teams. As I mentioned before, our team is really central towards the organization. So I get to talk to a lot of different teams, see what the different teams are feeding into us, and actually dictate, okay, can we change this? Can we change that? Or can we do this? Can we do that? Yeah, and it's been both a little long term, so that will take me the whole 6 months to finish, or something short term, which I can do within a week or maybe even a day. And I've been getting a lot more significant and important projects that go back to the business. So this is pretty important. Like the project that I did during the internship, that was really good as well. Like my manager loved it, and I was able to present it back to the business. But right now I'm doing things that I will be here to see the tangible output of it as well. So for example, one of the projects that I'll do, I'll be able to go out and actually see what the outcome is. And, can we make it better, or is that good enough that we can just move on with the new projects? What I found is having a supportive team really did make a difference. So I was fortunate enough that my team during the internship had shown me a lot of support, and I was able to come in to that same team because I knew they were already very supportive. And they gave me that balance between independence and responsibilities. They kind of threw me in the deep end, but if I did need help, I'll be able to ask them and they'll be more than happy to help me. So that was really, really important for me. And I guess this is very circumstantial, but for me, when I was applying for the graduate program, it was a lot easier just because I'd done that internship. I had a good relation with both my manager and my graduate manager, so I was able to communicate with them directly rather than, go through the whole process of asking them, going through the website, the application process. So it was really, really easy. I wouldn't say easier. I still had to do an interview. I had to come in and talk to, my manager, let him know that this is why I want to do this. But it was a bit easier because I had already built that relationship, which I think really helped especially through the API. Like I was able to come in here as an intern, build that relation, and then actually extract that for my professional career outside in university. So pretty much concluding my presentation, overall, I guess just looking at it from the journey, because when I was doing this presentation, it was a great opportunity for me to kind of reflect on my journey as well, coming from university to where I'm now. And it's been a pretty amazing journey. Like when I was coming to uni, I didn't know where I was going to be after 5-6 years. I didn't know what I was going to be doing. I didn't even know the power sector was a thing. I didn't know if I was going to keep doing electrical engineering, but here I am, and I'm proud to say, like, I'm really happy with where I've come to. And yeah, I think, everything's kind of worked out, coming to place where it needs to be. So yeah. On a personal note, like, personally, I've enjoyed a lot learning in university. What I found, I learned a lot of technical skills and a lot of very technical knowledge where I was able to apply them in a work environment. So I was actually able to use them, but not, force myself to do that and push myself outside my comfort zone sometimes. So I was pretty shy before I came into the grad intern programs. But during the intern programs, you get forced to talk to so many people where I kind of just started getting better and better, and communication skills improved. Pretty much it kind of forced me out of my comfort zone and got a lot better at a lot of things that I wasn't too comfortable with. So that was really, really beneficial for me. One of the best advices I ever got with one of my mentors in one of the places that I interned at was, you don't know what you don't know. And I think this was really important because, especially as an intern, I was very shy to ask questions because I was like, oh, this must be a stupid question. This must be a dumb question. Should I even ask this question? Does it, those kind of doubts always kind of crept in. So when this person kind of told me, you don't know what you don't know, it kind of triggered, yeah, he's right. If I don't know what I don't know, how can someone else expect me to know? And how do I even figure out I know that without ever asking that? And that was really, really important for me because that's the kind of attitude I've also brought into my grad role and probably would take on for the rest of my life. If I don't know something, if I never ask, I'll never know. So that was very important for me. And a few personal key things that really helped me throughout my journey, not just for an internship and career, but also throughout my life ever since I kind of learned about these, was keeping a positive attitude towards everything. I know it's very easy to say, but it's as simple as coming to work with a smile on your face, or leaving work not being mad or stressed about something you haven't finished, was really, really important for me because it actually made me enjoy work. It made me enjoy being here, actually respect the work culture, the work environment that I was in, and actually enjoy my time and talk to the other people that are around me, rather than, I don't want to talk to these guys. I just want to be here for 8 hours, work on my own thing. Actually enjoy being here and treat this not as a work environment, but as a collaboration space, you could probably call it. Doing the best I can wherever, so people will see the best out of me. This is a very cliche one, but it helped me you know, like if I'm going to do something, might as well do it the best I can in the first go, rather than, you know, half doing it for the first time and then being like, okay, I need to go back and fix this 10 more times before I get to the best output. Do the best I can, you know, and this really helped. I think was one of the best things was helped me build a good relation with my manager, because he always saw me doing the best I can and he respected that. So that was really, really good for me on my personal thing. And saying yes to everything. So one of the biggest things that me and my friend, one of the other interns, we used to say was anytime someone would ask us, do you want to do this? Without even understanding what it was, we just say yes. Because truth is, these all led to uncharted territories. So for example, like that was kind of how I got to see the tunnels underneath Sydney City. I got to go to multiple site tours, even though, like, you know, I've been to 10. The 11th person would come and ask me, do you want to go on this site? Yeah, why not? Like, it was always just, always say yes to whatever, you know, you never know what's going to happen or what you're going to learn on that journey. Because one thing I learned, especially from a site tour perspective, every single person explained what was happening in the site slightly differently. So some people would say this and another person would say something about that, but also a bit more. So you become that one person who learns all the different things from everyone and has that, you know, final knowledge of all the other engineers. So yeah, it was pretty good. Just saying yes and no helped me in a lot of different ways. So yeah, that's pretty, yeah. And finally, I'll never be afraid to ask any questions. So from experience, as I was mentioning before, the worst I can do is lead to a conversation. And this was very important. Like, even if the questions were bad or like not really what I was used to, or like something I think wasn't detailed enough or wasn't engineering enough, worst thing that will happen is lead to a conversation where you can ask more questions and actually understand a lot of the root of where the question came from. So yeah, that's pretty much my presentation. So thank you.
We've got a fair few questions come in. I'll start with the first one. So does Ausgrid work in tandem with AEMO in terms of distribution? And what advice would you give to someone without connections trying to get these internship opportunities?
Yeah, I'm sure Ausgrid, I think all the distributions would eventually work with AEMO. AEMO is kind of like the market operator. So you're going to have some sort of dictation going from AEMO telling the distributors what to do. But I don't think it's a very, you know, fist down kind of relationship. It's more like, you know, talk it out. But truth be told, it'd probably be better if I ask. But yeah, I don't want to say anything that I'm not too sure about. But I do believe they definitely work together, because it is like AEMO is the operator, it controls the market, the energy market, and Ausgrid is the distributor. So there'll be definitely some sort of correlation happening between the two. What advice I'd give, as I was saying before, always just go for it. Worst that can happen is you get told no, but if you never try, you're always going to be told no regardless. And, you know, like during my internship, only 2 of us were from the API. There's 5 that went through the API. So, you know, there's always going to be space for non-API or non-connection people as well. You just have to go for it. Like, worst comes to it, you get told no, but make sure you keep applying, never lose heart. And worst comes to it, you eventually find one.
Yeah. So what's been your favorite site experience so far out of the 10?
I mean, there's been quite a few. It'd be kind of, I actually don't know if I could say one. Like, all of them have been fun. Like, they've all been their own unique experiences where someone's told me something that I wouldn't know. Like, for example, why they put gravel on the sites, on the floor of the substations. That's to improve the touch potential, to make sure that if there is a earth fault, it doesn't go up and shock you. Rather, there's so many connection points. And that was an interesting thing that I probably won't forget for a long time. I really enjoyed going into the tunnels. So there's tunnels like 60 meters down underground of Sydney City. That was really, really fun. It's flooded now, so I don't think we'll be going there anytime soon. But I think they're all quite fun. They're all quite interesting. They're all unique in their own ways. They all offer their own kind of unique perspectives. So I guess another really cool one was because Ausgrid's in the city of Sydney, it's really dense. So going into some substations where you just have a really tall building and the substations are layered, like floor by floor, that was really cool to see. Like, you'd look at a building, you're like, that's just a normal house. Not it turns out you walk inside and it's just a massive building, just filled with transformers, bus bars. Yeah, it's pretty cool. They're all pretty cool.
That's cool. I did want to just check in with our online audience. I'm aware we are running a little bit behind schedule, so we may be 5 to 10 minutes over time, if that's okay with everyone. Got a fair few questions coming in, so I'll spend some time with the questions. So what are the key challenges that you foresee for the future in the energy transition?
Well, from what I've heard, like I know there's a lot of batteries coming in, a lot of solar panels and stuff. It's about how the distributed, like from what I know, from what I've talked to my managers and all the guys around my company, distribution company, it's how they're going to manage all the different assets and all the different generations that's been popping up. So, for example, solar panels and stuff, they're quite easy, or not easy, they're easier to model in a in the environment. Like, there's a solar panel here on this house. You can understand, okay, the load's probably going to look like this. But I think one of the biggest challenges are electric vehicles. So electric vehicles, they are a two-way, they're a battery, but on top of that, they're also a generation source. So if someone plugs it into the house and uses their electric vehicle as a generator, that becomes really hard to model because that person can take the electric vehicle, go charge it at the workplace and then take it back home and use that as a generator. How do you model that? How do you know where EVs are moving around? So that's going to be a fairly big challenge. I'm sure there's a lot more, like deciding how you're going to use EVs, whether they're sustainable in the long term, because batteries, they're good, but they'll only last you about 10 years, maybe 25. What do you do after that? How do you justify, the expenses with that? So there's a lot of economics involved behind it. I'm not really on top of all that just yet. Hopefully I get a part over it. I might ask my manager about it, but yeah, that's pretty much what I've kind of heard, but also what I understand are going to be the challenges in the next couple of years.
Yeah, cool. And next question is, in the asset management team, who looked at the commercial side, and was there a particular software you used for that?
Well, no, I'll be honest, I don't think I can answer that question perfectly myself. Probably be something I can get back to you on that. If you were really interested, just send me a message. But on the commercial side, I don't think we really look at. Oh no, we would look at the commercial side, but there is a team that called procurement that do a lot of the commercial side stuff. So basically, once let's say a replacement program has been put in where you want to replace a certain transformer, for example, you pretty much write a report saying, okay, this transformer needs replacement because it has these defects. This will probably cost this much. And some other team, so the procurement team or someone will take care of that and will just justify, okay, this needs replacement rather than maintenance. But yeah, there's definitely some sort of NPV and IIR calculations that I can guarantee. But there's also a lot more involved. So there's a modeling team which work in the same team as me, and they pretty much model like, okay, this asset in this area is probably, if this asset keeps running. So we look at not NPV and IIR specifically. It's more about risk and consequence dollars. So it's a very high-level topic, but in a high-level sense, risk is basically if that asset failed, how much money will it cost, or how many customers are you going to lose, for example, and the consequences is that dollar amount. So basically, what you do is we model all the different assets and say, okay, if this transformer was going to fail, let's say tomorrow, it's going to cost you maybe $2 million. And if the cost of getting that transformer replaced is $5 million, it's probably not worth replacing at that point. Now this is from my understanding, so I can definitely get a better answer if you're interested, but just by asking and talking to the modeling guys.
Yeah, cool. I think we have time for one more question, so I'm happy for you to pick a question you're more comfortable with, Ash.
I guess the first one that pops out was, how did you connect with API? Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. The day that I actually found out about the API was an email that was sent to me, because this was in 2019, so way before, a long time ago. I'm guessing first year uni, I came home and I saw an email saying, oh, API scholarships. I had no clue what it was. I've been truth be told, at the time, I didn't even know what the power sector was. And yeah, I just kind of saw it and I was like, you know what, that sounds really cool. So I applied for it. Worst comes to it, I get told no. That was my attitude going into it. And next, a few days later, I got a call saying that I got accepted and I would get a phone interview. Well, not accepted. I passed through the initial screening phase. I'll get an interview, had a chat, and yeah, it all kind of worked out. That's pretty much how I got it. And I'm pretty sure a lot of emails are going out. I'm pretty sure the API sent a lot more emails out to universities. So you guys should be able to connect through university emails and just through programs like this.
I just want to go over a couple of the other Power Up program opportunities. So for those online who haven't signed up to be part of the Power Up program, we can share that link with you after the webinar, but make sure that you get involved in our Inside Industry webinars and the backlog or catalogue of those that we have. The Learning Journal, which is available to our scholarship students and students who are undertaking vacation placement at our members. Next year, we also have our video competition, which will be happening in March, I'm pretty sure, of 2025. And then our scholarship opens next year in February 2025. So that is another chance for Power Up program participants to grab one of those scholarships that we allocate every year. And lastly, before we go, remember the API Careers and Power giveaway. So if you haven't entered, there's the QR code to enter and share it with your younger siblings. It's open to high school students and undergraduate students, and there's monthly prizes of a $100 gift card. We just gave away the September gift card a couple of days ago, and then in December we'll be drawing the grand prize, which is an iPad Pro.